Hello, everyone. Welcome to this event about cybersecurity organized by TechNA in collaboration with the HAACON conference. My name is Filippo Ramonato, and today I'll be moderating the discussion here. Just before we get started, I'll let you know that we will take questions on Slido. That's SLIDO. So just go to slido.com and use the code CYBER to send us questions. Together with me today, I have Elisabet Haugsbø and Marius Muench, two leading experts in the field of cybersecurity. Elisabet has over than 10 years in cybersecurity experience, working in companies like DNV and DubOcean. And Marius instead is a postdoc at Vrij University in Amsterdam. And he will now soon be joining the Birmingham University as assistant professor. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
And let's get started. So how did you guys got into cybersecurity? Was it something that you always sort of were interested from the beginning, or something that you discovered along the way? Elisabet, how was it?
For me, I think it was kind of like sort of discovery, sort of coincidental, because when I finished my master thesis in Engineering and Cybernetics from NTNU, I started working in a company that did simulator-based testing of control systems. And a part of that setup is also to test communication between the different systems and also check whether or not it's actually connected to the internet, which is somewhat bad, at least for those critical systems. And then later on, the company that I was working for was acquired by DNV, and then kind of like the transition towards more of a pure cybersecurity work, kind of like, I don't know, it was like an opportunity that arose, and I was like, well, I'm just going to jump on that train and see what happens. And here we are.
Okay, interesting. And you, Marius, how was it?
Yeah, so for me, I originally got into cybersecurity more of a hobby than a profession.
Okay.
In particular, during high school times, a friend of mine showed me a hacking challenge where a so-called buffer overflow was needed to divert the program and make the program behave in other ways than originally intended. And this idea just hooked me completely, and I since then started to learn a little bit more as a hobby. I dove into so-called capture the flags, which are ethical hacking competitions, and continued this for quite a while. But first, on a career path, I continued with my bachelor studies, which was in the field of telematics. And only during my master's, I added a slight security spin to it. But I still didn't fully emerge in the world of cybersecurity professionally back then. After my master's, I went off and started an industrial PhD program in the aerospace engineering. And during this, I realized maybe cybersecurity is something I could do as a full-time profession, as a full-time job. So I switched PhD program and got into full-time cybersecurity research. And here I am now.
Yeah, okay. Interesting that you came from pretty different directions to this. That was
but telematics it's still pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the recent trends in cybersecurity. So, Elisabet, which are the biggest challenges that you see nowadays in the field?
Well, obviously, it's like we're moving into this digital age, or we've been doing that for a while. But I think from now on, you're going to see it more and more. I mean, even sneakers are connected, you know. So and that kind of like creates this criticality that makes cybersecurity not just a company problem, but actually a society problem, because it's capturing all of us in this digital net or digital web, also called internet, I guess. And also you see that even our own national NSM, so national, what would be the English word for that? Security Authority, something like that. Their reports are getting like more and more grim for every year. They're also reporting that the attacks are getting more sophisticated. They're getting more kind of like targeted, aggressive, and it's taking a toll on the society. And also, like, you have more war in Europe. Who would have thought of that? And that has also kind of like escalated the kind of like the threats that we see.
And it's actually possibly one of the very first war where we see this use of cyber attacks, like on a very large scale, target for this specific purpose, right?
So I mean, it's going to be. I think it's going to be more, and it's and we all need to kind of like take it seriously, not just the companies, but like socially as well.
Yeah, and especially on the note of getting more and more connected devices, with a recent trend of the so-called Internet of Things, really of manufacturers pushing also on markets which they were not used to producing, right? Like now suddenly fridge manufacturers need to connect parts of the fridge to the internet to order products on demand or arrange the cooling remotely, like all those different things. Like the smart home is coming more and more.
Right.
And as part of this, devices are ever more connected, and due to this expose also ever more attack surface, right? If devices in one network are not properly secured and properly walled off, they get a very easy attack target. There's this one, like, I think from 2018, that example, which got a little bit famous, of a casino which got hacked because of a thermometer in their fish tank. So
thermometer in the fish tank.
Yeah. So basically, someone thought it's a nice idea to have a smart thermometer to be able to better control the fish tank, which, I mean, in itself is probably not that bad.
Seems
but right,
like
but
reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, but the problem is that the thermometer was just hooked up directly to the network of the rest of the casino.
Like the same network.
Yeah. So attackers could get a foothold there, and from there continue exploring the network, exploring other devices, and eventually exfiltrating the database of the casino.
Because these devices themselves are not protected, like out of the box.
Yeah, no, usually those kinds of embedded systems and IoT devices lag a little bit behind in terms of security. We see there the same kind of vulnerabilities on attacks we had 20 years ago on common desktop systems, which ties back to what I said earlier, that basically a lot of manufacturers are now pushing into the IT market without having the experience yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. And also, it's not just the IoT devices. I mean, you also see that we're getting into an age where we're getting more and more of these no-code or low-code devices, not devices, but applications. And those are great, obviously, but they're also kind of like an extra layer in a rather complex system, and they also demand high level of accessibility to other devices or other systems. And this is in order to kind of like to simplify the end user kind of journey for exploring data or using data from one system to another. And this connecting these critical systems or potential critical systems with a local no-code application might be a good idea, but it can also create a layer of a vulnerability because, again, these systems might not be set up with security in mind, which will create the possibility for someone else to get into the systems. And if those are, again, allowed to talk to or even write to, not just like draw information from other critical systems, you might have a way in. So it's like, again, it's like you have really, really good, I would say, thoughts and new things, intentions, and it kind of like forgets the whole, but what if? What if someone else also tries to do this? What can go wrong? Just like that kind of like thought of, why should we do this particular way? Should we talk to IT? Should we? Those kind of questions, they don't always arise when they should.
I think I remember a case that I read on the news that was something similar with a fish tank, but it was with a coffee machine. with the app, and then you can say, just make me coffee or keep it warm or whatever, and then it was able to hack into it. But yeah, those systems are built to provide functionality, ease of use, like better life, more commodities. But
and it's nothing wrong in that. I mean,
no,
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like you need to treat it as it is. You need to treat it as a potential threat.
Yeah.
And if you're able to wall it off appropriately, it would be fine as well, I would say, right? But at the end of the day, it's also to some extent risk management, right? Like if I get one of those devices, do I want it to be on a network? Am I aware of the potential threats, and am I okay with the potential threats?
Right. But there's also a lot of resources are being put into security, right? But even so, like we have, for example, Choice Hotel was hacked in 2021. Amedia was hacked in 2021. Stangeland Maskin in 2022, Stortinget here in Norway in both 2020 and 2021. So how is this still happening with all because now we know a lot about cybersecurity. We've been living in the internet era for quite a while. So do you have any idea why this is still ongoing, Marius?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% familiar with those particular cases, but a lot what we see, unfortunately, is still some attacks by the old playbook of phishing. Even if phishing gets more specialized, this is a problem. And similar, also a lot of, tying back to those little devices, are just misconfigured. They run with the default credentials and passwords. So when they're connected to the internet, attackers can just try the normal password which the manufacturer would give out, and may be able to get in already. There has, for instance, already been, or there is the so-called Mirai malware and botnet, which was in 2016 responsible for one of the largest, let's call it, internet outtakes we've seen to this day. And this particular type of malware spread by really just infecting devices and then trying default credentials on other devices in the internet, like automated. And based on this, millions of devices were actually infected by this kind of malware.
Right.
And so what I want to say here is that one thing I think we can work on in the future is to raise a little bit of the awareness of those threats and also of, in the end, of user awareness. I think we came to great lengths already, like passwords like admin123 or password are not the default everywhere anymore.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, but
it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Where if you want to be sophisticated.
But yeah, it's still something where everyone needs a little bit more of education, I think.
Right.
And I kind of like, I wouldn't say that I disagree with your statement saying that so many resources going into cybersecurity, because it's not enough.
Yeah, okay.
It's not enough, because it's like and then back to kind of like where I started saying that the society is getting more and more digitalized. We're getting more and more interconnected, which is not a great thing for cybersecurity necessarily, but it's an excellent thing for the end user functionality and user satisfaction is if everything is connected, because everything is faster, more accessible.
Yes.
But if it's not then built with security in mind from the start, it is going to have huge flaws. And well, I mean, you and I and or three of us know from like it's not built with security in mind, which means that what we do is like we're trying to patch something that's already leaking, and that's a lot harder than just building it right from the start. But we're past that point, so we can't really go back there.
Prevention is better than a cure, usually.
Exactly, but the thing is like then so we need more resources in cybersecurity, and we need to have more people aware of it. So like you've said, it's like more people aware of like, why are we still talking about bad and good passwords? Why shouldn't we use the same passwords everywhere? Well, if it leaks somewhere, you can, like you said, it ends up in a database somewhere, and people can use it to try to access multiple other accounts, which is not great. And if we can't get that right, well, I mean, people can talk about like, oh, this should be the end of the password. Well, yeah, maybe, but then something else stupid comes along. So we have to we have to like understand, or we have to raise kind of like the level of understanding of why we need security or cybersecurity. Otherwise, we're still going to have the same attacks over and over again.
Yeah, because as you say, I mean, it's true that it's not like we need more resources poured into this, and that's true because, as we said, like with the internet connected devices and so on, we are exponentially more connected than before.
Exactly.
The resources are not exponentially more than before, like maybe they are linearly more than before. But yeah, and it was also interesting to hear that it's not like the super sophisticated attacks that are, I mean, it's not only that, right? It's not this super fancy malware that is very advanced and we've never seen anything like this before. He found a backdoor that was never thought about, but it's even just standard phishing emails, which is something that's been going on, I don't know, since emails existed. Like,
I mean, I have to say
people still fall for that.
Yeah, but I have to say, phishing emails also get a little bit more sophisticated over time.
Okay.
Or at least
True.
I mean, there are also cases where I almost fall for a phish because it was just very well done in the sense that the attackers from some other database got some information about me and used this in their phishing attempt to personalize a little bit the email.
Okay. Wow.
And so they basically figured out I had a bank account at a certain banking institute, and were sending me from a web shop, oh, you paid with a card from this banking institute, but something didn't went through. Please double check and so on.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, before, like, I got how to say, I got curious when it asked me to enter my credit card number again, but only then I realized, like, hey, this is actually a phish. And this also means, like, even we as experts are not necessarily counterfeit of those kind of attacks, and there's a big human factor everywhere.
And then an average person that doesn't have your experience, I mean, even I probably would be able to be fooled there, right?
But I think it's really great that you brought it up, because we're not invincible, and like you said, it's the level of sophistication even in a phishing email could be extremely high. And I was not part of this email thread, but I know a former colleague of mine was also in the same kind of like situation, not with banking, but this was actually someone who got he had correspondence with a colleague in Germany, and this person got her account compromised, and then her email was spoofed, so it looked like it came from her email. It was attached because it was a contract involved, and they were emailing back and forth with different information due to like a third-party customer, and then he was expecting an email from her with the contract, so an attachment, and that's what he got. So he was pretty far along before he understood that this is actually not okay. And so it's like, something is fishy here. So, but it's just like we shouldn't be, even though phishing is kind of like the most popular way in, we shouldn't like marginalize it, because it could be pretty sophisticated, and it could be pretty damn bad as well. It could be like just stupid language and weird links, but it's like you have the span is pretty large.
Personalization is actually a fair point.
Oh yeah.
Phishing. So in that sense, one might say that also privacy, or knowing where your information is and what you're actually giving out, is important to have control over.
And sharing your knowledge, and sharing your I've done something stupid. Share it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like breaks the taboo of it.
How can we best respond to these threats then? Like, what can we do to protect ourselves more then? Sharing our knowledge is
sharing our knowledge, and also, as I said, like training, like creating more user awareness without blaming the user, right? Like there's no good in saying, oh, you fall for a fish, or you leaked your password, you're a bad person. Like no, dealing with those cases in a respectful manner, and saying like, okay, that happened bad, and use it maybe as an opportunity for education.
It's more of a knowledge and awareness thing. That's
and in that sense, also in the field of cybersecurity itself, right? Like it has kind of the stigma to some extent still of the, I don't know, black hoodie hacker sitting in a basement and hacking some code. And it's not really this, right? Like to move forward, I think we need a lot of different specialists in the field, and not only those stigmatized people, or like the stereotype which we have, or like one thing I recently heard is that there's the assumption that to get into cybersecurity you need to be a good programmer, which is not necessarily the case.
I was totally convinced of that.
Yeah, no, we need a lot of different different types of knowledge in the field, and also the field can benefit from a lot of for more inclusion and a lot of different backgrounds. For instance,
is that because people from different fields can see this, whatever is going on, in a different way, can have a different idea, like something that somebody didn't think about because they studied only this and I studied something else, and I can see this problem in a slightly different angle, and then I realize, oh, this might actually be.
Yeah, and everybody brings something to the table.
Right.
It could be by education, it could be by knowledge, it could be like non-academic knowledge education. But I totally agree. It's like it's cybersecurity is not just penetration testing. Okay. Penetration testing is actually a very, very little part of cybersecurity. You have and we're talking about blue team, red team, purple team, all of that. And for people who are like, what the heck is that? So it's like red team is those who are trying to attack systems. Blue teams are those who are trying to defend the system. And what we call purple teams are a collaboration of both. But my point is that you need someone also that knows or cares about cybersecurity while developing the systems itself. Like I said, it's like systems are not made with cybersecurity or security in mind, which creates huge problems because then you have to patch everything or harden everything along the way, like further down the line when we notice all the flaws. And obviously, it's always going to be flaws in systems. But if everybody in the chain at least has some part of, I don't know, prioritization of cybersecurity, we will be a lot better off.
In the back of their heads.
Exactly. And talking about like the pen test teams, which is like obviously one of my favorite because I came from that session. But you have people who is like extremely good at social engineering. So social engineering is the art of tricking someone to doing something they wouldn't necessarily do. That's something that I really suck at because I think it's so terrible. Right? I just can't do it. And then I've worked with people that I'm like, you kind of scare me because they're like so good at it, and we need and they might not even come from a technical background.
No, sure. Because that is just a personality trait.
Exactly, that's a personality trait. And also we talk about like education or not education and stuff like that. But I think the most important thing is your heart in it. Do you really love this? Are you passionate about this? Are you passionate about your job?
Curious?
Are you curious? Then you're going to do an excellent job.
So there are essentially the two big sides here, which maybe is really obvious to say, but one is security by design on whatever, all of the process, the components, the building of the software or the hardware. And the other one is the human part, like always keep in mind what can go wrong, be aware of this type of attacks and so on. I mean, I can imagine a lot of grandparents, they were not used to this, right? But so it's good if they, I don't know, if they receive something weird, just send that email to your whatever younger member of your family and just ask, hey, is this something weird, or stuff like that.
But how would they know that it's weird?
No, exactly.
Which is kind of like the learning part,
Yeah, exactly. This is where we need to educate people.
Exactly. So the second step is like knowing who to call, but the first step is like knowing if this is weird or not.
Being suspicious about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And what about instead our audience at home? So that they might be interested in a career in cybersecurity, right? And we already touched a little bit, but do you have any suggestions for them? Like, how can they get started in this?
So first of all, how Elisabet already said, if you're passionate for it or curious about it, just get started. I think that's my single most tip. And for getting started, there are these days just really a lot of resources out there, which in my opinion fit almost every learning style. There are classic books, a lot of them. but also like blogs, podcasts, content creators on YouTube, online courses on websites like Coursera or similar. So there are really a lot of resources. And I mean, at least for me, my way back then was, as I said, with those hacking competitions. So there are also practical challenges one could solve. Like there are websites which are just designed for testing the system or
That
like
sounds
trying
fun,
to,
right?
yeah, exactly. It also gamifies to some extent how to get into it. And as I said, that's how I got into cybersecurity.
But do you need to have a team to participate in those?
So in the hacking competitions, usually, yes, you compete in a team, but there are a lot of learning platforms and learning websites where you just can sign up and start on your own with challenges and get engaged with the community, and then maybe join a team. There are also a couple of tournament teams which are really like, there's one team which is literally called Open to All. The name is pretty much the program. Like you can just drop by and play with them and have fun, have a good time, and also learn from each other.
Oh, interesting.
And before anyone starts embarking on that kind of journey, I would do some security due diligence themselves, because you might end up if you're, for example, visiting one of the vulnerable servers to train, they might have their own kind of special ransomware for you or other malware. So just be careful and set up your own sandbox and make sure that whatever you encounter, if you're doing these kind of plays or games, that if you get infected with anything on your computer, it doesn't affect everything else. So just be aware of that.
Okay, that's
because you are. I mean, it's not super like dangerous or anything. It's just you need to be aware of it, because I mean, a lot of people are visiting these, and some of them are legit and some of them are not, these sites. So just be aware of that. I think that's might be like my second step. First step is like getting interested and stuff like that. Second step is like hooking up with a really good somewhat secure computer, at least, making sure that you don't hurt yourself alongside the training.
Exactly.
But I mean, you have a more academic ways of doing it as well. I mean, NTNU has several courses. I guess University in Oslo, a lot of universities in Norway, and a lot of these courses are online. So you don't have to like you sign up as all the other students, but you don't have to like move somewhere. And I think that's really, really good. Because then you can do an online course for half a year and then see if it's like, is it fun or not? I don't know. Do you know anything, or do you learn anything new and stuff like that? And also would like to warn you about like all these certifications, because that's especially, I mean, for me, like I'm in the process of hiring some cybersecurity, could be juniors and medium level security personnel, and it's like a lot of them have all of these certifications, but they don't necessarily add on to your experience. They look nice, but some of them are just like, I wouldn't say fake, but just certification. It doesn't tell you. Sure. So it's like, don't measure your knowledge by certifications. Some of them are really good. SANS Institute has some really nice ones, but you don't need the certification. You can do the course. You don't need the certification.
Right.
So that's just like, just be aware of that.
Sometimes the real world practice is way more important.
Yes.
Especially on a topic like this. Right? That was really interesting. I definitely learned a lot. Last time I used a sandbox, I was probably 5-year-old, so I started doing that again. But okay, I think we are closing in on time. So I hope our audience at home has learned also something. Today we discussed a lot about cybersecurity and how this is an issue for society, and it's constantly changing at a very high pace. We hope this seminar has given you some insight into what cybersecurity is, but also how you can develop a career in this. And I hope you got interested into trying out something about cybersecurity. We'll now take some questions. I need to just get them on my phone. There we are.
Hard questions. You can do the hard questions.
Yes, so just a second, it's refreshing. Okay, one anonymous user asks, just by being curious, makes it possible to get a cybersecurity job? So is it enough to be curious? And how does that work? What are the prerequisites for such a job? I don't know which one of
I
you.
can try to answer. I guess it means, but what he or she is talking about, like curiosity. Just being curious is not going to land you any kind of job. But I think being curious is definitely a trait that I am looking for in a cybersecurity professional.
When you are hiring someone.
When I'm hiring someone.
Right.
But obviously, I mean, you need some experience, either experience that you can document or experience that I can like test or well, yeah.
Yeah. And being curious at that point is like the starting point, right? Like out of the curiosity, you can start building a learning habit one way or the other, like either with university courses or online resources and so on. And you can build up your knowledge based from this curiosity.
Right. So leverage your curiosity to get out there and, do it.
Use it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Then Krebs asks, oh, sorry, no, it refreshed. It went away. Krebs asks, how much of the technical knowledge does CISO uses in this position? And how is the Norwegian market for this type of role?
Another question for me, I guess.
Yeah.
As well as the main role for CISO is having a strategic look on cybersecurity. It varies a lot, actually, depending on where the particular company has put the CISO. Well, I do still use my technical experience, but mostly it's making sure that you have a good structure for cybersecurity within the company, making sure that everybody, for example, everybody understands that cybersecurity is something that you need to care about. And how do we do that in a structured manner? How do we make sure that we have a structured arrangement around patching? How do we make sure that everything is in place and secure enough for that particular job or company? And then also, like, what's the stretch goal for cybersecurity? Are we going to have more people? How are we going to do that? So it's a very diverse role. When it comes for the market, I would say that the market is very hungry for people who can do a more strategic and work with cybersecurity, putting on the agenda every day along the year and every year going forward.
Let's see, I'm trying to get the question by likes here. One popular from AM. What technologies are the most used when working with cybersecurity? Maybe Marius.
So it really depends on the field or the part of cybersecurity you are in, right? Like, for instance, when doing pen testing, there are certain frameworks and tools which are used a lot. For me in academic research, we, for instance, dive a lot also in what is called reverse engineering, which is like looking at programs on meshing code level and trying to make sense out of it to maybe find flaws on a systematic way and create new tooling on our own to find those flaws. And for these, there's also a certain set of different tools and frameworks and what it's used for pen testing. So I would really say there's not like the only one technology you would need to know, but rather once you decide on a subfield which sounds promising for you, to then get acquainted with the tools and frameworks used in this particular direction.
Okay, interesting. Then another anonymous, IT security applies to everything from pacemakers to whatever else. So if security is to be adopted, you should also carry out a risk assessment. Is that a challenge or isn't? To have to do this, is that like a, I don't know, I read it like, is it an overhead that you have to do something like that all the time?
Oh, I love this question. More of these. So it depends on who you ask. Me, in my role, I'm going to like, why didn't you do a risk assessment? Like, what the heck? And people are like, but it's boring. It's just another thing that I need to do. And that comes back to like, do you really understand the implications of the system that you're introducing into the system of systems in your company, whether it's been small or big company? And that's why you do the risk assessment. So both for the system itself, but also for what new risks or new vulnerability are you potentially introducing into the company by having this particular system or application or whatever it is. Right. So yes, it creates an overhead, but we have to stop thinking of security or IT security as a overhead. because if you can't control it, you do not have a functional company, and then you will not make money. That's basically that easy.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Also, we touched briefly, we spoke a little bit about certificates, but I see that we have multiple questions about certificates. So one is about certificates. What are legit and what do we stay away from? Then was another which I cannot find anymore, but it was also about certificates. So can we maybe just touch upon that again?
So I think you are more knowledgeable about the certificates in the field.
Well, I don't know every certificate there is, but I've seen some certificates that I can't remember which one they're called. But it's more like, if it shouldn't be the certificate itself that gives you knowledge. It's like what comes before. What comes before this certificate? What kind of so I've mentioned SANS institutes because I've done a couple of those myself, and I kind of like it because a lot of them are hands-on, which is very important when it comes to cybersecurity, and obviously other fields of domain as well. But maybe particular in cybersecurity, this hands-on kind of work, whether it's being testing or building a secure system, patching, stuff like that, you need hands-on. So that's at least what I'm gonna look at if I have someone who maybe do not have a academic background that I can assess, but has courses and maybe an academic course here and there and stuff like that. I'm gonna look at like, what kind of hands-on experience is this, and what do I, how well do this person know the tasks that's going to be assigned for this person? So, but I'm not sure if I answered the question because I don't have any. I don't want to be advertising for a special kind of core certificate.
Yeah, I also prefer to not do advertisement here in that sense. But what I can say also is that on the academic pathway, so doing a bachelor's or master's with a focus on security, also helps great ways without a certificate. Yes. Like I see it a lot from my students that they oftentimes get hired in very good security positions without having made any certificate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. We're getting a lot of questions here, and I just have to pick some. There was one. This one is interesting, in my opinion. What can be done to increase collaboration between public and private sector organizations in the fight against cybercrime?
Wow.
Tough one, huh?
Yeah.
That's a tough question. I can give it a stab first, or do you want to? Oh,
yeah. Okay, no, go ahead.
I'm struggling with communication as well. Yeah. The public sector and the private sector are separate in many ways, but I think like creating arenas where people can share problems, what they've done wrong or what they've done right is very, very important. But it shouldn't be. You
think conferences, or you think something more?
No, more hands-on. Conferences are more. It's too leaderly, too little technical actually.
Too little.
Technical. Example is like the Techna networks. You can have like experts or field of experts from different. Public sector or private sector can come and be together and learn from each other, and then go back to the different organization they're coming from with the knowledge of, okay, so actually I can actually reach out to this particular person because I've made a connection, you know?
Right.
So it doesn't need to be purely within the company, and obviously you need to be aware of like what you're sharing and what you're not sharing, but I mean, we're all professionals, so I think that should be fine. But just arenas where we can learn from each other is very, very important.
Yeah, I would also have said like building bridges is like the most important step. Like start communicating in the means you can communicate with each other.
So this is essentially the same like experience across, and a very diversified and heterogeneous experience that we need to get people to talk about this and share their knowledge with them.
Yeah. And maybe for the leaders, or the managers, they need to understand that this is important. It's important to share, and it's important for the technical people, or for the competence around the companies to have time to do these kind of like sharing sessions, not just like fluffy courses or something like that. But in addition, obviously.
This one is also a funny question. How does a day at work look for you? For example, Marius. Like, what's your typical work day?
Yeah, so today is not my typical work day.
Yeah.
But I mean, usually for me, so I'm, as an academic researcher, do this, right? I start off in the morning, maybe looking at my emails, answering some emails, potentially reading a paper, and then go to meetings with my students, discuss different projects, discuss where to move next, like what could we research on, and then maybe do a little bit of hands-on research on my own, like staring in those reverse engineering tools. And
so you do experiments.
Yeah, doing experiments, setting up experiments, running experiments, or looking at the data which came out of the experiments. So
okay.
I think the little thing about an academic pathway is that there's not the typical working day. It's changing a lot. What are the day-to-day tasks?
It's both software and hardware that you work with?
Yeah, exactly. Like some days I'm sitting down at a soldering station and connect some wires to some pins to see if a device wants to speak with me. Or like tearing things apart just to understand how they are working. I think that's a really also a good first step to actually dive into cybersecurity. Like if you have like some device at home which you're curious about and you can spare it to be not working, tear it apart and look into the inner sides and see if it speaks with you. That's fun, and you learn something, and potentially you find security problems along the way.
Right. What about you? What's your day?
Oh, I'm kind of like, oh my God, I'm not sure if my day is exciting enough to share. Well, if I'm wearing the CISO role hat, obviously it's a lot of coordination meetings. But right now I'm actually working within the banking, and that's really fun because I've been working in industrial systems for like majority of my my background, and now it's like a whole new level of learning is opening up, because then now we have to like, okay, so what about fraud? We have to work with anti-fraud to make sure, and then there's like these systems within the systems within the systems within the systems that you need to understand, and that you need to like, okay, so we're bringing a new part in here. What does that actually mean? Who do I need to talk to make sure that I understand the implication such that I can advise them in the correct manner? And when I say them, I mean all the other technical people that needs to do their parts in order to make sure that this is safely introduced. So I would say that's a lot of the things that I do. And when I previously did pen testing, that was a lot more varied. But then again, you're just in a small part of the cybersecurity kind of like hierarchy. And a normal day there would be anything from being on board on a cruise ship, like in my yellow overall, like doing weird stuff in cabinets, till answering emails and sitting in meetings. So it varies a lot, but it's like, as long as you find it rewarding and you think it's fun, it's like, just go for it.
Right. We have a couple of questions about education. So what education is the best to get a career in cybersecurity, or what are the top 3 subject areas in a cybersecurity domain that somebody should know? Is there any recommendation there?
I mean, there are by now a lot of different study programs which also offer cybersecurity as a minor or major like subject during the study. So these obviously help, but they are not necessarily mandatory. I know a lot of people who switched from different fields, like mostly also STEM related, like things like physics or bioinformatics, and just switched after their masters completely to cybersecurity, and did really enjoy it. So I think here the answer is again that there is not the single best course or the single best education. There's more learn where you can learn, and try to, if you have the means and the possibilities, try to apply it to the field of cybersecurity and see how you can utilize what you learned, because whatever study you take, you learn something useful out of it, and this may bring something interesting also to us or to the other people in cybersecurity.
Could someone with studies in psychology enter cybersecurity?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I'm not well rehearsed within the field of psychology, but like I said, where you're working together in a team, for example, for testing, or you're working within the company to understand how does the employees behave around cybersecurity or behave, period. And then you need a level of, well, obviously, some people skills, because I've heard it so many times, like, oh, but it's a user error. If you've created a system that doesn't handle user errors, you've created a system that doesn't handle users. That's not a good system,
right?
You know, so you just like have to stop saying that. And designing systems, UX designers, I don't know if they have a lot of like psychology per se, but they do have a lot of experience in how to bring user behavior into the creation of the system. So just imagine if those people could also work together with the cybersecurity experts to bring that level into the start of building the systems. But yeah, it's but I mean, example for myself, I did a degree in engineering cybernetics. That's basically control systems and how does a system behave, and that creates this understanding of complexity within systems, which is also very well needed. Obviously, that kind of education also had programming and mathematics and like modeling of systems, but it's not as much programming as computer science does. So that's not going to be my strength, pure programming. Obviously, I can write scripts and stuff, but that's not going to be my main skill coming into cybersecurity. And for example, like you said, there was a question regarding cybersecurity in pacemakers. Well, then you need people who know those as well.
Right.
So you need a lot of different, because cybersecurity is so interconnected, or basically turning it all the way around, all our systems are so interconnected that we need a level of cybersecurity in almost every field there is.
Right.
So yeah, there's no wrong field for
cybersecurity. So maybe like the bulk of the expertise comes from computer science or technology related things, but when you actually go to the application level, the specific application, that you need experts on the specific thing, not necessarily that need to communicate together.
Yep.
All right. I don't know how much time we have left, a few minutes. So let's see. Yeah, so another couple of questions that can probably go together. One is like a hands-on, sure, but where do we start, or which courses do we trust? And another one is like step by step, how can one get to such job? Maybe since that, like as we discussed a lot about this, the way to get there are multiple ways, like all roads lead to Rome in a sense. Yeah. But okay, so maybe step by step, it's a bit. But what are the requirements? How does one start? Maybe that's something you can answer, like one step. If we can give our audience one suggestion, like just take the first step here.
I would say take a topic or a part you are interested in and try looking it up in the internet, like find a YouTube video, find a blog post, find something which dives into the details of it, and learn about it.
Well, I can try to be a little bit more concrete, but at the same time, if I'm more concrete, I'm going to exclude some people. So just be excused for that. Get your hands on a Kali Linux.
Sorry?
Kali Linux.
Okay.
That's a pen testing tool. Well, it's magic. But anyways, and then just be sure that you download the image from Kali.org, not anywhere else. And then that's where you start. And then, well, then you need a really, really big sandbox. But anyways, and then just start there. And then you have all the tools. Start investigating into the tools. You can use YouTube videos. You can do whatever. And if that's fun, just build on it. try to find vulnerable servers online. Don't do anything illegal, but try find those you can play with,
Yes.
and just go from there. But then you're moving into the kind of like the pen test, the testing part. But that gives you at least experience to say, oh, well, I kind of recognize this system. Oh, I find these flaws. Oh, let's try to see if I can protect against those flaws. And I know several of the courses in academic is actually built up this way. So, but it creates this, that's what I mean by hands-on experience.
Right.
But that's testing and protecting, and cybersecurity is so much more than that.
Very cool. Thank you very much. And thank you to our audience at home for the very interesting questions. I hope you learned something. I hope you got inspired to dig a little bit more into cybersecurity. This is an important field that it affects all of us. So I hope this was interesting to you and useful. And thanks a lot to Elisabet and Marius for sharing their knowledge.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.